Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I'm on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters, both new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by T&K Hunting Gear. If you haven't heard about T&K, then it's about time you do. I've been using T&K gear out in the field and on hunts and have fallen in love with their stuff. T&K is veteran-owned and 100% made in America using only American-made products. All their gear is covered under a lifetime warranty with no questions asked. If it breaks or fails, they will fix it or replace it for free. T&K is your resource for bino harnesses, bow slings, and a lot more amazing gear. For more information about T&K Hunting Gear, go to tnkhunting.com or search for them on Facebook and Instagram. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Freedom on and stay soulful. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by the Crazy Elk Company. Based out of the state of Washington with products made in America, they are providing solutions with gear to problems you didn't even know you had. Their tag wallet is one of those solutions, and I had the pleasure of using it on all of my hunts this last year, and it is now a mainstay in my kill kit. The tag wallet is a water-resistant zippered pouch that comes with its own reusable zip ties to safely and securely store your notch tag for quick and easy access. For more information, go to crazyelkcompany.com and use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. Be blessed, everyone, and as always, stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and tonight I have just like the Michael Jordan of hunting to me. When I started hunting or even thought about the concept of hunting, I was coaching football in the fall, boys basketball and girls basketball in the winter, lacrosse and track in the springtime, and I was like, dude, I want to hunt. Big game wasn't really that much of an option for me. And so what I did, being a person who was always a pro Second Amendment and loved shooting, is coyotes. Coyotes being open year-round in the state of Washington, it hooked me, it captivated me, the thrill of the chase, and it really set the tone and the path for me on my hunting career, to the point where here we are today on a podcast recording with my hero of the Coyote Woods or the Coyote Plains, the deserts, whatever you want to call it. Big Al Morris is here on this episode. We're going to talk all about Coyote Hunting 101 and hear a little bit of his story. I'm going to share some of my cool experiences that I've had because of him. And Al, thank you so much, man. I'm honored that you were on this episode.
No, Johnny, I met you last year and you mentioned it then and you revisited me and here we are. We're going to take a little time, and in this crazy world, me and you are going to talk about what's important.
That's right. Making a difference, chasing our dreams, acknowledging what we want in hunting, because it's all about
that you just summed up my life.
I love it. Okay, so Al, obviously not just predator hunters listen to this podcast. So I know who you are, but maybe for the people up here in the state of Washington or wherever they're listening to might not know who Big Al is. Can you give a little background on yourself?
You know, like I told you, my dad milked 60 head of Holstein cows every day of my life till I was 10. He sold the dairy. It was really awesome. He had the number one milking Holstein cows in 68, 69, 70 in the United States of America. So anybody that's ever been on the working end of a cow, you know, those old black and white cows that Dad grew so well, you know, you learn how to work. And even at a young age, I've got pictures of me when I'm 4 and 5 years old, standing there in rubber boots and a big old yellow apron, spraying down the cows as they'd come in. And that was my job in the wintertime, spray them down so he could clean them up and put those milking machines on them. And those old Holstein cows were how we made a living. And my dad instilled in me several values. And the number one is work hard, be honest. And that's all we get's our name handed down. And you've got to do something with that name. And you just got to uphold the tradition, the values. And I see in this world today that some people don't hold to those traditions, don't value their name that their granddaddy and dad worked so hard to give them. And I've always, that's been first and foremost for me, is always uphold the Morris name. Three Morrises signed the Declaration of Independence. I'm related to all three.
Ah, yeah, I love
So
that.
yeah, we've got some tradition to uphold there too, of course, in this election turmoil time.
Oh man. Well, you know what? It's all going to be good because life happens for us. It doesn't happen to us, and we get to rest upon that because we what we put out into this world is what we're going to end up returning. And so as long as we keep putting out that love, that light, that goodwill
You know,
towards mankind, it's all going to be good. I truly
I
believe
learned all
that.
that from my daddy. And so that's, I started early at a young age learning how to work hard, and it transposed over. I was a machinist, I was a plumber, and my dad died when he's 58 years old, loaded 54 bales of hay on his pickup truck, and the next day he was dead. Abdominal aortic aneurysm, a triple A, right where your heart has a big aorta, comes down and splits and goes to each kidney. Right there where it split, it ballooned to the size of a grapefruit or a softball and burst. And he was done. You're done. You're over. Anybody that shoots archery, to you, when you cut a main artery, what happens? The animal bleeds to death. Well, Dad was probably only conscious for about 10 seconds, and he was gone from this earth. And my best friend was gone. And the last conversation we had was, "Why aren't you chasing your dreams? I know you're making a living." I had two little girls, and I had a job that I was paying the bills with, and being successful. But he wanted me to chase some dreams. And he got out of the car and he leaned back in. He goes, "I love you, son." And I go, "I love you too, Dad." And that was the last thing I ever said to my dad. It was the most impactful thing I could have ever. I don't know very many people that get that opportunity to tell their dad they love them just mere hours before they die. And when he told me to chase my dreams, that was the last thing he told me to do. He told me he loved me, he'd support me 110%. I have felt his love and support every decision I've made chasing my dream. And it's been an awesome journey. I was guiding part time. I would only guide in September, October, November for elk. In 1990, I started guiding part time. In 2000, I made the move. Dad died in January 22nd of 1999. January 22nd of 2000, a year later, I was selling hunts in Chicago, Illinois, at the Rose Center for Three Forks Ranch, USA. I had moved my family the first week of January, and I was chasing my dreams, selling hunts for Three Forks Ranch. I'd moved there full time. I was at Three Forks Ranch 5 years full time after I'd been there for the 15 guiding. And I took the owners of Hunter Specialties. They offered me a job. I had to wait a year. I took them up on their offer to do the Operation Predator video series and Primetime Bulls series for Hunter Specialties. I worked with them until 2010. Late in 2009, they wanted me to sell more Tech 4 underwear instead of go hunt the World Coyote Calling Championship. And I made a cold call to Mike Dillon at Fox Pro. I said, "I need a job. I'm quitting Hunter Specialties." He goes, "I don't even have that job." And I said, "Mike, it's time for you to open that position for me." And dang, if he didn't call me back 2 weeks later and say, "We're going to do it." And it was about a month later, I had to go meet John Dillon, the owner and the dad of Mike and Steve Dillon. The three of the two sons and the dad really have made a successful business in Lewistown, Pennsylvania. I'm so lucky to work for Fox Pro, and we've been making TV and video for them for 11 years coming. So
So incredible. And I I want to say grew up because I was old. I was in my 30s when I first started watching, but I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, these are awesome. I got to meet these guys. How did they even get into the industry?" All this stuff. And here I am talking with you, just blown away. It's so cool that you got to chase your dream. Your dad got to bless you by saying, "Hey, go live your dreams," giving you that permission. One of the things I like to talk about on this podcast is giving yourself permission, believing in
absolutely,
yourself and saying it's okay. A lot of times people always have this attitude where they're down on themselves. Like, you got to be your number one fan. If you don't believe in yourself and you don't give yourself the permission, you ain't going to
nobody
accomplish.
else will.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
and you know what? In giving yourself permission, it's hard to give yourself permission to chase a dream when you have little kids, when you have bills piling up, when you have a wife that is saying, "Hey, we need this, this." She's got an order to her existence. And so some people put their dreams on the back burner until they get a little more freedom to maybe pursue those dreams. And I tell everybody, you're only limited by yourself and your own imagination. That's your only limiting factor.
Amen to that. I actually, so the year that I got my hunter safety class, I also got married. And so then I have three wonderful boys, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a year and a half-year-old. So like I'm in the thick
Wow.
of it, but I got this vision in my head and I'm like, okay, we're gonna get it done. We're gonna accomplish it.
You
And
know,
this is a part of it starting here. So, Al, I want to give you a little background on myself. I love coyote hunting. I'm a huge proponent. The very first time I ever called in a coyote, I was with my wife in Eastern Washington. She's on her, I was like, hey, babe, you want to go hunting with me? I got my hunter's license now. It's like the very first time. She's like, I was like, you can bring your cell phone, there'll be cell service. She's like, okay. So we sit down in this draw for the last like 30 minutes of the day, and I'm just blowing on this hand call, being like, I don't know, this is what Al Morris does on Fox Pro. I got it, or Fur Takers. I like, it's got to work somehow. I don't know. And
it's
sure enough, and I always was told, like, call for 30 minutes and then move on. And exactly at 30 minutes, a coyote pops up in the exact same location. And
that's awesome.
and I granted, like I've never even shot a deer or anything up until this point. And I'm like, instead of shooting the coyote, I'm like, babe, a coyote, a coyote. And she's like, what? And right before we left to take the 2-hour drive east of the mountains, I was like, let's say a prayer for the journey and all this stuff. And,
Mhm.
and dear Lord, bless this trip. And, if it be your will to bring in a coyote, I'd really appreciate it. And my
Mhm.
wife quickly slips in, and may no coyotes die. And I'm like, oh, you're killing me.
Don't say that, honey.
And so needless to say, after I get her attention and we both see the coyote and I get my crosshairs on it, I'm shaking. Like, talk about buck fever. We're talking coyote fever on the very first one. And I'm just like, I shoot and miss because I also have her thought of the prayer that she said in the back of my head. And I'm like, oh, I don't even know how to skin a coyote. I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing. I know what I want to do with it, but I have no experience. And so let's just say I shot and missed, and it was one of the most epic times I've ever had. And I was like, I'm hooked. I got to do this again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
So,
it was your wife jinxed you. So
yeah. Thanks a lot, babe. So needless to say, ever since then, it's buying the Coyote DVDs, watching Fur Takers. I got myself my Fox Pro Inferno call. I'm ready to rock and roll. I've had a couple different successes, but I would not say I'm good at coyote hunting at all. One of the coolest opportunities I did have at shooting a coyote was I was on my way to Eastern Washington and I listened to you on a episode of the Rich Outdoors podcast. This is back when he first started. I think you probably would remember recording with him. And you were talking about trying out a specific sequence of calls, start off with a howl, a female howl, or all this stuff, and working through it, even to the point where, like, give it 3 minutes, wait a minute and a half, all this stuff. And on the very first stand, playing exact sequence that you said on that podcast that I listened to in the car all the way until I shut the door and started walking, I called in a dog. And I was like, yes, dude, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about. This is
Right.
epic. And so that's why I say when I had an opportunity to meet you, talk with you in person, and then now have you on the podcast, I truly am honored and just blown away with this. But I have a lot of questions. So if you don't mind,
Let's get through them. Let's get through them.
okay. So talking about coming off that story about that calling sequence, what are these calling sequences that you like to start with, go through? I don't know. Like, talk to me like I'm brand new. This is a hunting 101 for coyote calling and coyote hunting. Um, and I think,
Coyote hunting it's simple. There's 4 reasons coyotes will come to a call. The first reason they'll come to a call is they're hungry. They've got to eat. So that's why your prey distress will work. The second reason a coyote will come to the call is they're territorial. And I think hunger and territorial are their two dominant traits. That's the two things that make them tick 24/7, 365. Now you have breeding season and you have curiosity sounds. And those four cylinders are what I try to fire on. So most of my sequences are in combination of territorial and food. And in February, the peak of the rut for coyotes is February 15th. They'll start late in December or early January. Some of those females will come into estrus and they'll go till March 15th. But, and then curiosity, coyotes are curious animals. When they hear sounds that make them curious, they will come look. But day in, day out, they're going to protect their territory and they're going to eat. And they only breed for that month and a half, 2 month time frame. And they're curious year round. And but they won't fire on curiosity as much as they will territorial and food. And so if you can play sequences in combination the whole year, you can base the whole year of calling around one event, and that's having their pups. They breed in February. If February 15th is the peak of their when they breed, it's a 62-day gestation period, just like a dog. So the last week of April, first week of May, those pups are in the dirt. They're hit the ground. Their eyes are closed for 13 days. They don't move around much. The next 15 days after they open their eyes, they may move to the opening of the hole. It's the next 60 days when they're 60, 90 days old, they really start getting in trouble, getting around. And that's when you can really have some success. We do it with the dogs and dogging. But every sequence is based on time of year for me. Um, August, September, October, November, I primarily start with prey distress sounds. Um, December into January, this period we're in now, January, February, March, I primarily do the vocalizations for the breeding sounds. And then April, when they're having pups, early May, I don't really harass them much. But June, July, August, I will use vocals to get after those pups and insert myself in on adults with pups. And that's where the pup distress, the pup fights, things like that really work well. So every sequence you see me play, and that's what's crazy is there's 10 years of video on YouTube between the Fur Taker episodes and now Fox Pro Hunting TV. I have no secrets. Um, other than with the diaphragm call that Wayne Carlton taught me how to use a diaphragm call in 1983. I was 16 years old. It changed my life. One guy took 10 minutes out of his time to teach me how to use a diaphragm call, and it changed my life forever. I was lucky enough to win 4 world championships. Coyote calling. I've won 1 world elk calling championship. So I have 5 world championships, and I'm just a fat kid from Springville, Utah. But at the end of the day, those sequences you talk about are just sequences that I've landed on over the last since 1983. I called in my first coyote in 1983. The first time I ever blew a diaphragm, the diaphragm calls I was showing you earlier. The first time I ever blew that call, I didn't call an elk in. I called in 7 pups and 2 adult coyotes. I called in 9 coyotes, and it changed my life forever. Johnny, it changed my life when I called in those 7 pups and those 2 adults. They were coming at me single file, and they all spread out and came at me, spread out hunting whatever was making that god awful noise they heard in the sagebrush, and it scared the crap out of me and enthralled me all in one motion. So, sequence to me is time of year, and I vary it, but at the end of the day, they're fairly similar. Just sometimes I'll start the rabbit before I start the vocals, and other times I start the vocals before I start the rabbit. But I usually do all of it on every stand now, and I'm being more successful.
That is so cool to hear and really, really important. I think, for new people getting out there, they're just like, I don't know, just start blowing on a call or any, or the other idea is that coyotes live everywhere, so they kind of assume coyotes are going to be everywhere. So it leads me into the next question that I had for you is, Do you pre-scout for coyotes? Like if you're intentionally coyote hunting, are you out looking for sign, for tracks, or are you listening to see if they're howling? And do they stay in a certain location, or do they take, circular paths kind of like elk and they'll show up every week or so? Or like how do you go about to where you're starting to get on coyotes a lot more?
So the way me and Garvin won 4 world championships is we knew exactly where the coyotes were. And we found those coyotes. It was really funny. The first coyote hunt we ever hunted together, we called all day. We didn't do any scouting. We didn't know how to scout when we first got together in 1997. Me and Garvin Young, the other 4-time world champ, hunted together for the first time. And we went out blind, called all day, never called a coyote till the last stand of the day. Garvin said, when I see a coyote, I'll kiss my lips. A coyote's coming. Well, he'd been blowing that Circe. He had a green Circe call with kind of the flat rim on the end of it. He'd been blowing that all day, so his lips, he kind of started talking like this because he'd been blowing that call all day long. And all of a sudden I hear, well, there I am 50 yards downwind of him, and my eyes are closed. We got up at 3:00, drove all morning, hunted all day. This is about 5:00 at night, and all of a sudden I opened my eyes, and the prettiest pair of coyotes I ever seen coming down the hill. And I looked up to the sky above. I said, thank you, big man. I got this from here. And I put that crosshair, that big old male blew his chest out. I put that crosshair right on the center of his chest, pulled the trigger, and click. I didn't load my gun.
Oh.
So we commenced firing at these two coyotes. When you click on a coyote, what happens? Well, they swap ends. What was his face is now his butt. They're hauling butt. We start firing. Garvin gets up as he walks by me. He said, the least you could have done is load your dang gun. So we drive into check-in. Another hour and a half, 2 hours back into check-in. We get there and everybody's asking Garv, how'd it go? And he goes, talk to Al. And so my buddy Nolan Gardner goes, what happened? I said, he finally called in a pair and I put the crosshairs on his chest and clicked. I didn't load my gun. And he goes, that happens. He goes, you guys are in the world in 2 weeks, aren't you? And he goes, yeah. He goes, well, have you found your coyotes? Me and Garv look at each other and goes, well, how the heck do you find coyotes? He says, you take Johnny Stewart 161 coyote locator on your tape player, drive around every 2 or 3 miles, put it out the window. When they howl back, you just go put some flagging on a fence post, and then you go back during daylight, you know there's coyotes there. Well, that sounds like a good... I didn't even have a Johnny Stewart tape player then. I had to go to I think I went down to a pawn shop in Provo and bought my first Johnny Stewart tape player. And luckily, one of the 2 or 3 tapes they had was 161 coyote locator. And so we started driving around at night looking for places. And Garvin married a gal that had 2 or 3 kids from a previous marriage, and their dad lived in Phoenix, Arizona. And Garvin says, I'm going to drive him down to Phoenix, and on the way back, I'm going to scout. And I'll never forget, it was 1:30 in the morning. I was doing that sleep thing again, and my phone rings. And I go, hello? And he goes, dude, listen to this. He just bought a cell phone earlier that year. And he held the cell phone out the window of the car, and all I could hear was yap, 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 yap. I go, what is that? And he goes, more coyotes than I've ever heard anywhere. And I go, where are you? And he goes, I don't know. I'm lost. I'm somewhere between New Mexico and Arizona on this road, but I'm going to find it, and we're going to come back here, and this is where we're going to hunt in 2 weeks. And so 2 weeks rolls around. We paid our $225, entered the 1997 World Coyote Calling Championship. The first time we'd hunted together 2 weeks previous, we did not kill a coyote together. That first day, we shot 11 coyotes on that road that he had found howling at night. The next day, we get up and shoot 2 more coyotes. We had 13 coyotes. The year before, 22 coyotes had won the world championship. We were hoping just to place in the top 10. When we checked in, we were team number 13. And he goes, what's your team number? 13. How many coyotes do you have? 13. He goes, no, that's your team number. How many coyotes do you have? And I go, 13. And he goes, you're winning. Me and Garv looked at each other in stunned disbelief. Well, every team checked in that year. There was 70-some teams hunting that world championship. The closest team to us had 7. It was a rough calling weekend, but we had found so many coyotes. The first time we hunted together, we killed 13 coyotes. It was purely luck. That first championship was luck. and blessings from above, because while we did learn the technique to howl, it was really lucky that Garvin found that road at that time, howled those coyotes in, and we went back and managed to. I called Garvin, had to relieve himself. He's like, I got to take a crap. So I went out on a stand. He's still at the truck crapping. I walked out to a stand, called 5 coyotes in, and killed one
Oh,
out of the 5 that I called in. If we'd have shot better, we'd have really put a whooping on them boys. And we looked at each other. Me and Garv looked at each other and said, that was so easy. We can do this again next year. It took us 11 years to win another one. So that was 97. In 2007, we won our second. In 2008, we became the first team to ever back-to-back a win and have 3. We're the only team to this day that has 3 world championships. And then in 2016, I was 50 years old and won our 4th world championship. And I don't know many things you can be 50 years old and win a world championship, but we did it by scouting and finding those coyotes. And what the number one technique is to drive all night and take a coyote group, yip howls, coyote pair, cows fed siren. We drive every 2 miles, stop, howl. If they howl back, now we got GPS. I can just push a button on my GPS and mark that location. And then we can go through, and I will not hunt a place that I can't go 15, 20, 30 miles and get a coyote to howl back at me every single time I howl to them. And you have to do it multiple nights. Some nights coyotes won't respond. And once you find that's a target-rich environment, one of the more less known things about it is finding coyotes is easy. Finding coyotes that will come to a call is hard, that haven't
yes.
been mucked with. So finding coyotes is just one leg of success. The other leg of success is finding out if those coyotes are callable. And the next leg of success is if they are in an area that you can move around quickly and make loops. I'm a big fan of loops. I don't like dead end roads. If you have to drive 10, 15 miles on a dead end road and then turn around and it takes you an hour and a half to get back out of there, that's an hour and a half of dead time. If you don't make 25 to 27 stands on day 1 and 15 stands on day 2, you will not beat me and Garvin Young. We make 30, 35 stands in a day and a half contest, and it's really sad. The World Championship was, in my opinion, the best designed contest ever. And it was a roving championship from Elko, Nevada to Williams, Arizona to Cortez, Colorado, back to Elko. Every 2 years, the championship moved from one state to another. Nobody had home field advantage very long. And the ability to locate coyotes in a different state, in a different country, in a different place, and to be successful on those coyotes. Me and Garvin Young hunted the World Championship for 22, 23 years. We're the only team that finished in the top 10, 19 of the 23 years we hunted it. And that record will never be broken. Now the World Championship was bought in Elko, Nevada, by a gentleman that changed the rules. They only have to kill 5 coyotes on Friday. The first team to check in on Saturday with 5 coyotes is the world champions. That to me is just a little bit of luck. And but locating coyotes, finding coyotes, and finding coyotes that'll come to the call is that's where all the 1 year alone I put 6,000 miles on a Toyota T100.
Wow. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit more. A couple questions that came up that I was thinking about. Do you ever do the scouting with the howl in the middle of the day, or is that always at night? And then also, do you night hunt once you locate them, go out there with the spotlight or anything like that?
So night hunting's just coming on, but we howl all night long. Coyotes will howl up until about 9 a.m. And then we've got coyotes to howl in the middle of the day, but middle of the day, our scouting is reduced down to tracks, looking for tracks and scat. If you've got a lot of tracks in a 2-track that's dusty, and then you find scat, and if you're driving down a road and there's poops on the road, that's a good indicator that there's coyotes there. It's almost as good as howling. Finding all of those things, lots of tracks, lots of scat, and they howl good at night, man, you're in them. And then at night hunting, I just got a thermal scope here this last couple years, And man, it's fun to go out and howl them and then just move in on them right then with the thermals and whack their butts, call them right in. It's awesome.
That is so
So
cool. Well, I'm
yeah,
so actually I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. We're my group is gonna be filming. We're starting a show that's gonna be on Carbon TV called
nice.
Soul Seekers, and we're doing a coyote hunt here at the beginning of February up here in Washington. Would you like to come?
I would love to come up there.
We'll talk.
My schedule's crazy in February, but you know what? We'll do a hunt together. We just got to figure out when and where.
I love it. It's one of those things where I was supposed to be at the expo in Salt Lake City, and instead we're using those dates to do a hunt instead. So,
Me
um,
too. I've got Texas, February 17th. I'm gonna be in Texas filming gray fox and coyotes down there and bobcats. And then I've either got to decide to go to Colorado before the 17th or after the 25th or whatever when I get back. So
yeah. Well, this is something we're gonna have to line up later on. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, so calling in heavy timber. So Pacific Northwest on the western side of the slopes, it's timber. It's heavy, thick brush.
been there.
They're still there. How do you? But
Lots of coyotes.
a lot harder to scout for them, I guess. That's where you have to literally just take a walk and howl at nighttime, right?
Yeah, no, you gotta you know, and that's the thing. Coyotes, when they get in that heavy timber, that dense foliage and stuff, that sound bounces around, and sometimes coyotes, if it's too loud, if it echoes, sometimes coyotes won't respond to it. They know it's not real. Or if you have to get loud enough to penetrate some of that stuff, they know, whoa, that's way loud. You know, to a coyote, they understand all that. So the number one technique for thick coyotes, if you know they're there, is just go in there, put the collar 10 yards from you, get you a shotgun, and go to work. Let those coyotes come and be watching the downwind, or I'll get 30, 40, 50 yards downwind of my collar because every coyote is going to end up downwind of that sound. Every coyote that comes to that collar will end up downwind. And if there's two of you, put one of you 30, 40, 50 yards, whatever, good shotgun distance from the collar, and get the other guy another 100 yards downwind and have him with his shotgun. And if they're really circling to get the wind on you, he goes to work on them. It's a beautiful thing.
That's so cool. When we're talking about starting off a call at a set, and let's say the scale is 1 to 20 on volume, what do you like to bump in at? Like a 5,
10.
10?
Half volume if I'm in any kind of wind whatsoever. Depends on the sound I'm starting with. If it's howls, you probably want to start at a 12 or 14. Coyotes are fairly loud. So if you're starting out with howls, if you're starting out with prey distress, rabbit, bird, anything, half volume is probably where I'd start at. If I feel like it's echoing or it's too loud or you're in mountainous terrain, go ahead and bump her down to 8, 6. Start out soft. There may be a coyote really close,
That is,
and you don't want to offend that coyote.
yeah,
So
that is really good advice. I appreciate it. I think you actually might have mentioned that on one of the podcasts that I heard that I applied and it sure as heck worked. So, how often are you like to drive at nighttime, you like to drive loops, all this stuff. Is this more like a public land hunt or private land? Obviously, Utah offers some great public land, or is it more,
mhm.
knocking on farmers' doors and saying, "Hey, do you have a coyote problem and can I hunt?"
It's
Or
all part and parcel. I think, uh, there's a lot of rumors going around about where we win championships and stuff. And for the most part, every championship we've ever won for 35 bucks, anybody can buy the license we had. And yes, we had stands on private land, but at the end of the day, I think public land hunting is as good as any private land hunting. The difference is a lot of people have access to that. So finding public land that isn't mucked with as much is harder, but it's not impossible. And so these loops, these stands, everything I talk about, it doesn't matter whether it's private or public. What matters is how you set it up. And I take it to a whole nother level. When I set up stands, not only do I find places I want to call from, but if it's me and Garvin contest hunting, we will take flagging and we will mark exactly where we sit, where Garvin puts his collar, where I put my collar. Did he just say he uses 2 collars on every stand? I believe he
What?
did, Johnny. What?
Oh.
So now you're already learning something. And so we will mark where we sit, we mark where we park, we mark where we put the collars. I don't leave anything to chance. And most stands I have marked for 2 wind directions. I try, you know how you can get Weather Underground, it'll tell you a wind direction 7 days in advance, but does it always work out for you with the
Nope.
Weather Underground? Are those weather guessers very good? So not only will I do all that work, but I will do it for 2 different wind directions. And having the ability to move fast, set up fast, know exactly where I want to be. Now, if I'm just fun calling, if me and you were just to go fun calling, I don't go to that much effort. But if you want to win championships, if you want to be the best coyote caller, you better do that or somebody's going to outwork you.
That totally makes sense. Now, are you running both calls simultaneously, or is it based off of the wind, and that's why you're doing that?
We run we run 2 callers simultaneously almost every stand. So let me give you an example, something that's not, you know, um, I will run the corvids, ravens, magpies, crows, while Garvin runs the prey distress, rabbits, birds, deer, um, voles, moles. He'll be running the the prey distress sounds while I run the corvids. And then as the stand progresses, I start to run more of the vocals. And with my diaphragm, I can communicate back and forth with a diaphragm call I can put in my mouth. I can be communicating with howls that are taking place. I have a repertoire that some people have picked up on YouTube and stuff, but I can communicate with the caller and I can start to create a scenario that makes coyotes come look at me. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to accomplish with an electronic call, with a hand call. Um, I hope people listen to your podcast. We might take their coyote calling to a whole nother level if they will start communicating with the coyotes, start talking real coyote talk, and start to communicate with your Fox Pro with your hand calls. And you start doing that, there isn't a coyote walking this planet that we can't call in.
I love it. So my listeners are gonna say that sounds great. How do I do that?
Well, experience, there's nothing, Johnny, you know, the number one thing you can't trump is experience. I do seminars. We did it last year at the expo. You saw how many people packed into that expo to see us talk about calling coyotes. People think there's a secret. The only secret to coyote calling is getting out and doing it more so that you feel more confident when you project those sounds. It's a scenario. If you're trying to create something's dying and something wants to eat it, they're in competition with the magpies. You've got magpies up there in Washington. You've got ravens. You've got crows. Those corvids are constantly on the hunt and they're in constant competition with the coyotes. If you can make those coyotes that are out there at 500-600 yards think that those ravens, crows, and magpies are eating their food, those coyotes will run to the call. And if you can create that scenario that there's other coyotes, strange coyotes that moved into their territory that's eating their food, they lose, it wigs them out. They lose their damn minds coming to the call. So it's just nothing beats experience. I can tell you, you can watch 1,000 times, but Johnny, until you get good at it yourself, I can't make you good until you get out in the field.
Oh, I totally get it. And I was just about to write an article this month on my website about the 10,000 hour rule that Malcolm Gladwell talks about. He's like, it takes 10,000 hours to master a topic, you know? And so here I am 6 years into hunting and I'm like, okay, you know, people are always like,
What have I mastered?
yeah, like, well, like people are like, well, you know, why is it taking me so long to kill my first animal? I'm like, well, are you only going out one weekend out of the entire year? Are you only going out 2 weekends the entire year? And so I started to reflect upon the 2020 season, which was incredible for me. I filled all my big game tags in the state of Washington and 2 black bears, a nice buck, and a nice elk. So it was like a heck of a year. And I started
Awesome.
thinking, and I'm like, well, shoot, I was in the field. I was hunting. Didn't matter what animal I was hunting because when you're in the field, you're naturally going to pick up on things.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I was in the field over 25 days, specifically hunting. That doesn't count just like, taking a hike and a scouting trip or all that. That was me getting out there. And
Right.
it pays off. And I'm not saying, this year I might have been blessed or it could have been luck or whatever you want to call it. I also know that the more hunting I did this year, the more success came with it. The year before, I didn't hunt as much. And so when it comes to coyote hunting, if you're only doing it one time a year, it's going to take you a while to get good at it.
Those animals spend 365 days a year keeping that hide on. And if you think you can go out for 2, 3 days and take it from them, you better rethink it. And the more days you spend afield, did you notice you started paying attention to what you smelled, what you heard? All of a sudden, you've inserted yourself. You're not a stranger in that environment. You become part of that environment. And as soon as you become part of that environment, you become the ultimate predator.
Yes. I always talk about on this podcast, there's a difference between being an observer of nature and a participant.
You
And
know,
and so there's, a lot of people will hike and backpack and bird watch and animal watch and all this stuff, and then they'll start hunting, and then they're like, well, I'm just a hiker with a gun, or I'm just a hiker with a bow. And until you start to pick up on the details and really settle into what you're doing, nature comes alive at that time.
well, I think when those people, when their existence relied on every day them going out and bringing something back to the table, they were the real deal. They knew when not to leave the cave. They knew when they better get their butts out there to get something to eat because it was prime time. And we have lost that. We just go to Walmart, we go to, the grocery store, we can go get any food anytime we want. But the good hunters I know insert themselves out there and they become part of the outdoors. And it's woodsmanship, it's knowing, it's knowing the animal, knowing that prey, and I don't know, hunting coyotes sets a guy apart because anybody can go out and hunt something that eats grass. It's another thing to go out and hunt something that can eat you. And even though coyotes aren't a real threat to human beings, they are predators just like us. And when you can start defeating the predators on a regular basis, the wolves, the coyotes, the bobcats, the lions, you're living right.
That not only that, and I agree with you 100%, but I also feel like it makes you so much better at everything else, at hunting all the other animals.
No, it's natural. Here in Utah, we have such a, and you've got some public land up there in Washington too. We're so lucky to be in the Western United States. I feel bad for a guy in Pennsylvania, Ohio, um, Louisiana. They don't have a lot of public land to hunt. I grew up here in Utah. We're what 78% public land. I got public land 5 minutes from my house. I can go for a hike and I'm on the side of a mountain that's Forest Service, and I can go hunting right there. I can go shooting right there. And I've killed deer and coyotes right here, 5 minutes from the house.
Oh, it's so
So
beautiful. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about, and I don't typically do podcasts like this where I have like a list of questions, but this has been such episode I've been looking forward to that I was like, okay, I got to get some questions answered.
let's do it.
One of the coolest things, and this is less of a question and more of a statement about hunting, is I'm in the field. My mission is mentorship, is conservation. I'm in about hunter recruitment and hunter mentorship. Like that's why I started this podcast and all my platforms. More often than not, people are like, "You don't need an AR to hunt. You don't need a suppress." I thought hunting with suppressors was illegal. What is all this? And so I actually got into hunting before I owned a hunting rifle. As let me rephrase that. Before I owned a bolt action rifle, I only had AR platform. At first it was a 5.56. Then I was like, oh, well, they make 308s is when AR-10s were popular and just coming out. I was like, dude, I can
Yep.
have an AR platform that's legal to hunt with for big game and still like recreational shooting. So here you are. I'm getting into hunting. You started off shooting like bolt actions, and now all I ever see you rocking most of the time is an AR with a nice suppressor on the end, and like you're living the
Well,
dream. I love it.
well, here's the deal. We as hunters get so caught up, and you can even say fly fishermen think they're better than a guy that uses a spinning rod with a spinner. Fly fishermen think they're purists, and that guy with a spinner or a guy chucking a worm into that river is blasphemous, right? And then you can get into the muzzleloaders. 209 primer in an inline muzzleloader. I see guys hit 400-yard targets all day long. And a guy using a flintlock with a round ball isn't going to be hitting targets at 400 yards. So the guy with the flintlock thinks he's better or more traditional than the guy with the 209. And then you got the archers. There's guys only use the stick bows, the traditional, wood recurves, the long bows, whatever. And anybody that would use a wheel bow or a compound bow is blasphemous. We as hunters have to get over ourselves. We all are rowing the same boat.
Yes.
An AR-15 has as much value in the field as the bolt action. That bolt American Ruger that I love to shoot, my 6 Creed, is no more valuable to me than the AR-15 MPR that I take to shoot coyotes. And you can shoot deer, elk, antelope, bear. There isn't anything walking North America that 308 that you're rocking an AR-10 isn't a valuable, won't do the job. We shouldn't discriminate, especially amongst ourselves.
Yes.
That's, we got enough pressure from the antis. Why would we inflict our biases on each other?
You're speaking my language. So I'm a believer in the Bible. And in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 18, it says, "Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." And here people are like, why is hunting just not as big as it used to be? Why is this? It's like, get over yourselves, people. If you start leading with love, you're going to be making a difference and working on hooking people to get them included and recruiting hunters and all this stuff. It's not about you. It's not about you and what you do and what you can accomplish. It is about loving other people, setting up a good example, being an ambassador, and loving them so that they can find enjoyment and pleasure out of it and that their life can then be transformed.
Love thy neighbor as you would love thyself. And
Absolutely.
if you can do that, which, dude, I really seriously, I think I will never go to heaven because I think there's people on this earth wasting oxygen, and I have judged them, and we are told not to do that. But at the end of the day, what we need to remember is if you take that 5 minutes for somebody, you could change their life, and be that person that would change somebody's life, and don't inflict your bias on them. Promote what they're interested in, whether it's they show interest in predator hunting, duck hunting. Be that mentor, be that option for when somebody calls you up and asks you a question. Be open and to that suggestion, and be positive. That's it.
I totally agree. And I actually had John Bear, the voice of the West, out on an episode, and I was talking to him about using coyote hunting as a recruiting tool for hunting. And I think one of the biggest things is like people are always like, I want to hunt deer first, or I want to hunt elk first. And it's like, you need to learn how to hunt. That's the art of
Yep.
hunting. And coyotes are open year round in a majority of states. So in the off season of your big games, if you only have a week to hunt and you take it for deer camp or whatever it is, like get out on a Saturday, get out on a weekend, and teach somebody how to hunt. Because when, like you said earlier, you master the predators, all of a sudden a lot of other things open up.
Everything else falls in place. And here's the thing about predator hunting. Some landowners will not let you out there to hunt their turkeys or their deer or their elk, but they will let you out there to hunt those coyotes, because if you take those coyotes out, they might have more deer, elk, turkeys, pheasants, quail, things like that. Hunting predators has opened more doors for me than any other avenue. And once you can start opening those doors, and here's a prime example. We were predator hunting a place in Montana, and they have some of the best elk on the planet. And every year I went up there for 5 years, I was like, man, I'd give my left, what, to hunt elk on this place. And one day the lady said, you guys want to come elk hunting next year? Absolutely. And we got to hunt elk there. And now we've built a relationship. We're going to hunt elk there, hopefully, till the day I die. And I opened that door being gracious, courteous, and kind by hunting their predators. And you just develop that relationship. You show them that you can close all the gates, that you can help them when they need help and you're there. And you just be positive. And you show that person love, and that love comes back to you tenfold.
Absolutely. It's a circle of life. What you put out into the universe, it comes right back at you. Okay, so this is something that
Yep.
I've just been dying to know. Who's a better coyote hunter, you or John Bear?
You know, if you've really got to ask that question, it's probably already been answered. Um, John is one of my dearest friends, and he is an incredible guy. And John invited me coyote hunting in central Utah. We hadn't hung out much, and I went and called in coyotes. I think I called in 3 coyotes in one afternoon in a place he didn't think we'd see a coyote. And I showed him how I was using some of my diaphragm techniques and stuff. And to John's credit, he picked that up and has run with it. John is a formidable coyote caller now after just spending a little bit of time with me. He's such a study. He's such an he is a true hunter. And some of my funnest episodes have been hunting with John Bear.
Oh man, that's so cool. He is
I would never say I'm better than him, but the buckles speak for themselves.
Oh yeah. Hey, I don't have to speak. Those trophies on the wall speak for me.
You know,
I love it. That's so cool. Uh, what do you say to people who are like coyotes? You're not going to eat them.
right?
What do you do? What's your being a fur taker yourself? Like,
No, to me, coyotes are just a management tool. Coyotes live for a couple the same reasons we do. They want to live their lives. They want to have their pups. And they're ruthless predators. And at the end of the day, Johnny, we don't need excuses to hunt these animals. God put these animals on this earth, if nothing more than to rip those hides off and send those hides off because those hides have value. And everybody wants to say the more we hunt them, we're managing them, and that we can grow more whitetails and more turkeys and more. Coyote hunting at the end of the day is just freaking fun. And that's enough reason for me to hunt a coyote. And I don't need to be. I used to get caught up with, oh, we're managing and we're promoting these other species and we're putting those other species ahead of the coyote. At the end of the day, there's nothing to me ahead of the coyote. The coyote is the top of the they're my. I watched Jim Shockey go to Iran and shoot these amazing goats and sheep on the side of these 10,000-foot cliffs. And, that is a real hunt. That is amazing to me. At the end of the day, I get the same thrill as I'm sure he did shooting that ibex off a cliff in, Romania or wherever he's at. At the end of the day, calling in a coyote, fooling that predator to come to a call and doing everything right. That coyote never knew I was there until I might have went, whoo, and he stops, blows his chest out, and I put that 6th Creed right between the solar plexus of his shoulder blades, and I watch him, first thing hits the ground is his chin. That is the most awesome thing a man can do. And then to utilize any part of that coyote. I have skulls everywhere. I have hides. You can see the hides, I moved the head right there. There's hides hanging right there. And at the end of the day, there's value in just the hunt. There you go.
Yep.
You're
I got
the same addicted crew. He's showing me a skull. I can walk you over and show you these skulls and the trophies. At the end of the day, coyote hunting is fun. I tell everybody, Fox Pro, we sell fun. If you go out, and it can be the most frustrating. I got so frustrated this weekend. We were down in some really good territory in New Mexico, and we only called 4 coyotes in. And we missed a couple. We killed a couple on video, but we documented the frustration and the grind. We were seeing coyotes at 500-600 yards. We'd sneak in, set down, start calling. They'd leave. They didn't want anything to do with the caller. I played rabbit. I played bird. I played rodents. I played single howls, I played pup distress, I played fights. Nothing. They would not come to the call. Why those coyotes would not react to a caller, I don't know. We're 30 days away from prime rut. I think those females are in a weird period, a weird 7 to 10 day period. When they come out of it, they're gonna run to every predator call because they got to eat. They got to put on that reserve because those puppies are coming. And after they hook up, those pups are growing. She's got to eat. And I don't need any other excuse other than it's fun. I bought a license, several states, Utah, Nevada, Wyoming, Montana, no license requirements. Oregon, Washington, you got to have a license. California, you got to have a license. Um, Man, just get out there and have fun. Don't get caught in the semantics. Don't get caught up with anything. Go out and have fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Joanna Waller always talks about. It's about living, right? Just go live your life. Just get out there. Go get after it.
Yeah.
Man, that's so awesome. Okay, you are an inspiration. You got me all jacked up, ready to go. I'm really excited. Al, thank you so much and be blessed in 2021 and years to come, man. You are an inspiration. What you do, and listeners, I really want you to understand this. When you be the person that you are, your true authentic self, you not only live your life to the fullest, but you are making an impact in people's lives that you may not ever know. You may
Right.
never find out the impact that you are making in other people's lives by chasing after your own dream and living the life that you want to live. And you right
Chase it.
yes, you right here, Al, are that example. And I really, really thank you.
Well, thank you, Johnny, and congratulations to you. And let us know. Part of this networking is we need to go on a hunt together. We need to share those stands, and we'll grow together.
I love it. I love it. Hey, Al, just real quick, I want you to pub any social medias or websites or shows, all that.
Everything you need to learn about Fox Pro is on gofoxpro.com. We are the only electronic calls made in America by hardworking Americans in Lewistown, Pennsylvania. All the other electronic brands are made in China by the Communist Chinese Party. I don't. There's no other way to slice it. In this day and age, in this political climate, I know some really good red-blooded Americans that they're schlepping this cheap Chinese stuff and they think it's okay. Um, get the buy American, be American, get the American made Fox Pros. You can go to YouTube, Amazon Prime, Roku, um, uh, Fox Pro Hunting TV. We're off the outdoor channel, but on Fox Pro Hunting TV, if you go look up Fur Takers on YouTube, you will get our 12 seasons that are up, or 11 seasons that are up on YouTube. I got nothing to hide. You can go watch. You can burn the next 3 or 4, 5, 10 hours watching me kill coyotes. There's no secret. What you don't see is the grind. You don't see the empty stands. Some people think I'm successful every stand. I'm not. I put my pants on one leg at a time. I pray to the same God you do, and we're just very fortunate to do what we do. And Johnny, keep chasing it.
Oh, I appreciate it. Hey, I actually forgot one question that I wanted to ask you.
Let's go.
I feel bad that this is out of order, but if you've hunted a location and you know there's coyotes there, how long do you wait before you go back to that location?
That's a great question, Johnny. Don't wait. I've hunted 8 o'clock in the morning, and I knew it was such a great spot. I killed a single, and I just knew it was one of those places that multiple coyotes would. Coyotes are on a loop. I think they can be on a 6 mile, 10 mile, 15 mile loop. It can be a 3 day loop, a 2 day loop, maybe one day to get around a place. But if it's a really good location and it's really good, I made that stand. It's on the Operation Predator video, like 3 or 4 or 5. One of those Operation Predator videos. I made it at 8:30, and at 4:30 I killed a double in the same stand. I know guys that won't hunt the same stand in a year. They think it's taboo to hunt the same place in a year. If there's coyotes there and it's a good stand, you can make the call. You can make that stand the same day. You can make it in a week. Coyotes fill in. If you kill a coyote, if you kill a pair, it's the educated coyotes, the ones that you shoot at that you don't hit. They can become problems for you. They're harder to kill. But at the end of the day, if it's a really good coyote stand, I'll make it twice in a day.
Oh, See, right there, you just gave yourself and all of us permission to just go out there and live the life and just try it. Just get out there.
Well, it's a trial and error. We're all on the same journey. I like your platform, Johnny. I like that you like to help, that you're mentoring, and that you're raising people. You're raising the bar for everyone too.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Big Al Morris, you are the man. Everybody, go check out the shows. Go Fox Pro. Go check out Fur Takers. All that. It is what I was, as an adult, raised on in my hunting adolescence, and just so thankful for Al and everything that he's done. Make sure to go check it out. But always, ladies and gentlemen, remember, there, just live. Be yourself. Go out there, chase your dreams, chase the animals. You're never going to have regrets when you're giving it your all. As always, ladies and gentlemen, freedom on and stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast, as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.